Welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer, and we're going to be discussing Snowfall, Season 4, Episode number 6, Say a Little Prayer. If you've not hit the sub button, please do so. We'll be doing these reviews every single week. Hit the upvote, leave a comment, and we're going to start, full spoilers ahead, we're going to start with the death of Fatback. That sucked, man. We have a character who has, showing his loyalty to the crew. He basically Franklin had convinced him to take the rap for the murder of Khadijah and Scully's daughter, and Leon was against it, but he went along with it. But Khadijah had a plan of her own. She's clearly taken charge of that crew over there with Scully and Manboy, and basically put up, what is it, $1 million to get him out on bail. She put up the million, got him out on bail, and basically wanted to interrogate him. She wants to know where Leon is. Now he never gave him up. Now I don't think he completely, maybe 100% knew, because that was the thing that I was confused about. Did he know where Leon was hiding, or did he legitimately refuse to give him up? I wasn't completely sure about that, but regardless, she stabs him to death, leaving his body there, and now Franklin has somewhat of a beef with Leon over this. It sucked. It was tragic. Here's a character, that, one of the nicer characters on the show, who is another casualty of this whole situation. What did you guys think about the way it was handled? I know, Spencer, you've watched the entire series, so you've seen this character for quite some time. But yeah, what did y'all think about the way that all played out?
Khadijah cooking up some chloroform in her kitchen was crazy. Because that's what she was cooking. She wasn't cooking crack or anything. I think she was trying to create a chemical reaction to chloroform him to knock out Fatback. And when you see throughout this season, Fatback is super loyal. He's willing to take one for the team, and for that to happen to him was hard to watch. It was sad. It's because he's one of the characters who is from day one been loyal to Leon. I don't think that he would have, had it been given up Franklin, I think he might have gave Franklin up. But Leon's protected him. Leon was his boy, and to see him go out like that was hard.
Yeah, and Fatback, like me and Brian have seen less of the show than you have, but Fatback seemed like a character that was, in fact, even slightly smarter than Leon on a number of occasions, and like it seems like he should be in charge instead of Leon, but they work well as like a pair of characters to follow. Like there's a good dynamic there, and it's sad to see that gone, and it's surprising to see this character gone. And I'm sure that's what you meant when you said like there are a lot of unexpected deaths on this show that you really don't see some things coming. I didn't see that coming. I didn't think Fatback was going to die.
And that's happened in previous seasons where you're just like, okay, they're just talking, and then someone pulls a gun out and shoots somebody, and you're like, oh shit. You don't expect it, and to me that's great writing, because and we all watched the parts of the first couple seasons of Walking Dead, but I read all the comics, and that was the fun part of the comics, is that no one's safe. And that's what I feel about with this show now, is that no one's safe. So watching an episode, I'm always curious if Teddy's going to eat it, if Gustavo's finally going to mess with the wrong person, the only person I think is safe is Franklin, because I think he's playing the character. He's playing the real person, Rick Ross.
Well, he's the Jack Bauer. That was always the debate about that show. Could you do it without Bauer? And the answer was no.
Yeah, so this show, I think he is the central focus, but everyone else outside of him, I don't think is safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of illustrates that, because I definitely expected to see Fatback around for a while, for much longer. Like I'm not saying I was 100% sure he would survive the season, but as far as dying this early, I didn't think so. I thought we might have in fact saw some drama in prison with Fatback. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I thought that's where they were going to intimidate him and everything.
Well, because Franklin in one of the earlier seasons went to jail, and uh, he ended up this guy who he knew in the first season. They take a guy, the guy like beats him up and steals his money. So they basically go and get their money back from this crew of dudes. But one of the guys ends up being in jail with Franklin, and they whoop Franklin's ass like on a nightly basis. And then he talks with Jerome, and Jerome's like, "Man, you got to fuck him up." And Leon's like, "Don't let him do nothing to you." And then he, steps it up. But Franklin doesn't have a lot of pull in prison yet because they haven't showed a lot of his crew go to jail. So my thing is how are they going to protect Fatback if they don't have members in there locked up with him? So my thought is that Fatback's going to go to jail and something bad's going to happen to him there because he doesn't have protection. But he never made it.
Yeah, I was very surprised by his death. Some good news, unfortunate for the actor that plays Fatback, but Snowfall did, in fact, this week get picked up for a season 5. So the end of this show, this season, will not be the end of the show. It will get another season. FX just ordered it, which they typically do midway through each season. So we don't have just 4 episodes left. We, in fact, will have another set of 10 potentially. I think it'll be 10. So that changes sort of the dynamic of how you look at the way that things are going to go over the next 4 episodes, I think, knowing that they have to lead to another season, specifically with the Irene storyline, which we'll get to a little later, because that's one of those stories where it's like, well, that could have resolution, but no, it sort of can't if there's going to be another season. But I think something that will play into another season will be what happened with Jerome and Louis, because they're now spreading the disease, if you will. They went out to Little Rock and basically have introduced crack to Little Rock, and she has some people there that she showed them how to cook it, and she was basically telling them she was going to be able to provide them with the coke supply to make it. She gave them the basic rules: never ever use the stuff. The addiction is strong. They threw this nice little party. They're letting people try it out. Jerome was getting very frustrated because he knows where this shit is going to lead, and he's had to kill somebody. A lot of horrible things have happened to him as a result of this. But finally, in the end, Louis explains to him why they can't get out of this, and the whole thing about Teddy and the CIA. A lot of story development with those characters. Also, like I said, I could see jumping next season and seeing how Little Rock is going, and what how things are going out there. What do you guys think?
I Googled Little Rock in 80s and crack, and it did. Like, it blew up and pretty much everywhere in the 80s. I mean, any city started to have epidemics of pretty large proportions. Baltimore was off. Like, there's a lot of cities that it got real bad, and Little Rock, it did. So, knowing that all these places were affected by, and they talk about it too. Louis saying that they were instructed by the CIA essentially to get more money. This is their way of getting more money, expanding, and knowing that that's how they were getting more money, and it was basically to help fund the governmental secret wars. Was it stung when you saw her lean on Jerome, because it wasn't necessarily a choice.
Right.
I mean, they still made a choice. I mean, they could go to jail, or they're choosing what they feel is best options.
Yeah, because they have no good option at this point.
No,
there is no good option for them. Like they're in a literal damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And I think that's going to balloon. I think they're going to ignore the instructions to not use, especially the younger character there. I wasn't sure whether that was their son or what, because they didn't clarify that. I think him in particular, that he's going to wind up. Charles?
Charles. S-H-A, yeah, Charles.
Like, well, damn.
Yeah, I wrote it down. Yeah.
But I think Charles is gonna ignore that advice, and that he's gonna start using the product, and that's gonna create problems. And but yeah, speaking of the '80s and Jerome, like how '80s was that shit he was wearing?
That was
You
so
know,
badass.
that was such
I watched it Thursday morning, and by the time I got to work, I was like, Brian, have you watched it yet? He said, nope. And I said, and I pulled up the video where it was just a trailer with Jerome wearing that. I don't even know what it was. It looked like
he was like
a
wearing
leather.
a mesh net shirt and a trench coat.
It looked like a leather robe with feather boa on it. Like it was,
Also, the rings and I love that shit, man.
and his boots and his pants, and like you said, Larry, his mesh shirt. Dude, I was dying.
That was an outfit that just purely only existed in the '80s.
I don't know, man. It went all the way to the early '90s. Right? Said Fred was still wearing it. So
That's true. You know, like the '80s and the '90s, they kind of blend together. At least the early '90s.
oh yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. Well, and then it also had flavors of sort of that end of the '70s because there was you had that little sliver of disco vibe in his wardrobe.
There's a bit of that, yeah.
I love it, all about it. We get a lot from Teddy this week. We find out his brother has died. You know, his relationship with his father is over essentially. So he's going through that trauma, and then on top of that, all the shit with Franklin's going down, and he sort of takes it out on Franklin in one particular scene where he basically gives the line, "Everyone is expendable," which was a threat, definitely. And then to top it all off at the end, basically the whole situation with the guns, the war down, the war that the CIA is funding. Shit is going bad, and they're basically like, yeah, you got to fix this shit. We got your back if you need us. And he's like, no, I'll take care of it myself. And so he's about to go down to South America. I'm assuming for the next episode, or maybe the rest of the season. Who knows? Shit's going really bad for Teddy, as it is for Franklin. What'd you guys think about all just how bad it's going?
It made me think of where Avi was, because that's where he was getting his guns, and that's the issue right now, is that they're not getting gun shipments. So I don't know if he's going to go see Avi or if he's going to try and find another supplier for guns. I'm really curious because, Gustavo basically picked his ass up off the ground because he was so, drunk and out of it because he was grieving. And it was rough watching Teddy go through that and thinking of how he's going to come out of it on the other side. Whether that's a lot of guilt, like he's going to feel responsible for his brother passing. So I don't know if this is going to be a character defining moment for Teddy where he changes completely, and basically he's been pretty, I don't want to say mild, but he's been very calculated. But I'm curious if now he's not going to be calculated. He's just going to go apeshit and be a loose cannon, as opposed to very calculated and smart like he has been.
Yeah, and in fact, I think funny you mentioned that, because I think we may be looking at a role reversal here, where Gustavo has accepted his offer and agreed to play ball, and he seems like a man of his word. We may be seeing a more in control Gustavo and a more out of control Teddy. And honestly, for the character, I think the line that he said, "Everybody's expendable," unfortunately for him, that may be some foreshadowing for his future.
He might be right. I thought of that too. I was thinking that.
Well, yeah, because Gustavo's in the CIA now. They might just use him.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's one thing I was thinking. And not only that, but he's also got, he's planted that seed in Franklin's mind too. Is the fact that it's like, Franklin didn't say anything, but Franklin did have a smirk on his face when he said it, because I feel Franklin is very much a character that likes to know where he stands with you, especially if he's got that kind of business relationship with you. And so Franklin's now thinking, he's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Everybody is expendable. It's like, including yourself, so, Franklin's going to try to position himself where he doesn't need Teddy, where maybe he still got his deal, but he doesn't necessarily need Teddy.
Yeah, I agree that there was a piece of me that thought that could be a lean towards Teddy. Teddy could be the one that gets taken out of the equation. They could put any agent in there and be like, hey, here's this dude Gustavo, you're working with him, this is what you're doing. Hey, here's Franklin, and this is what it is. So maybe, there's 4 episodes left. He's talking about how he's going to go down, I guess, to hit up some different countries. Who knows what's going to happen with him, and how that's all going to play out. Franklin has another thing on his ass, and that would be Detective Stern. We met him a couple episodes back. He was talking with Irene. He's out for Franklin. He wants him. He checks his car out and everything. We learn later how they're hiding the drugs in the sound system, which is pretty funny. But he knocks his cane down. He's telling him like a child is dead. It's on you. He's coming after Franklin, and yet again the way the show is framed, it's crazy because it's like Detective Stern is like in the right, and when you step back and like Franklin is doing horrible shit, and this guy is like, look, you're fucking up everything, and yet you're rooting for Franklin. You feel you want him to come out and prevail. It's just the dynamic of the show,
right?
But I am curious to where Detective Stern is going to go forward. How he's going to be. He clearly is more intelligent, I think, than Nix. So now he has another cop that's going to be a problem, and who knows what he's going to do and how he's going to come after Franklin. No matter what Franklin does to position himself, he may have to lean back on his connections with the mayor again in order to deal with Stern. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that detective, he goes. I mean, when he kicked his cane out and had the cop, push him up against the car, and I think that this cop, or detective rather, is, like you said, way more put together than Nix, and I'm curious as to what strings he can pull, because didn't he talk earlier in the season? Didn't he talk to Irene?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah,
so that's what I'm saying.
did. Yeah,
I think that she's going to uncover some stuff, and maybe they'll end up trying to work together a little bit to get some things accomplished, or he will use her for information too. Because
remember, he didn't want to go on record. He was willing to, pretty much everyone, even that other agent, but he was willing to give her what he knew, but he didn't want his name associated.
Yeah.
Well, even that other agent didn't want his name on it.
No,
like he was willing to give her the documents, but it's like, yeah. So, it's going to have to come to a point where, I feel like Detective Stern is going to have to decide whether he's all in on helping Irene and exposing Franklin, or if he's just going to leave that situation alone, because, it seems like he's got one foot in and one foot out, and that's not going to work because, while he's trying to go about this as cautiously as possible, Franklin is accumulating power, accumulating, eventually, I'm sure, enough power that a lot of these threats won't mean much, whether it's threats from Teddy or you name it, and like we said, people like Teddy, they're expendable. And, I'm sure Franklin's goal is to likely, if there is a CIA handler that's working with him, to get a more naive Teddy, someone in Teddy's position, but who's more naive and easier to manipulate at this point. So, and as far as Stern, like the political connections that Franklin has and the connections to the CIA, that'll handle characters like that. Because, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I don't know if this is your first time seeing him, Spencer, if he just popped up in this season, but Stern doesn't seem to know. He knows that Franklin's protected somehow, but he doesn't know how. He doesn't know what those connections are. So my question is, does he back up once he knows just how deep the rabbit hole goes? It's just like, is that too much for him?
Yeah, I don't recall seeing him. His neighbor, the cop who he shot. Oh well, yeah, and disposed. Like, I think that he had a crew of like 4 people, and Nix was his partner, but he had like 2 or 3 other guys that were with him all the time, and I don't think that Stern was one of them. But he could have been, but I don't think he was. I think he's new to this season.
Yeah, I don't think he knows something's up, but I don't think he knows the CIA part of it. Um,
Yeah, and once he does, I feel he may well, he might back off because he doesn't know the heat behind what he's doing, and it's a little bit above his pay grade, and it could ruin someone like him, because he's not powerful enough to weather something like that.
we have Irene. She comes in, guns a blazing. Not literally, but she comes after Franklin's dad and basically says, "Look, I know everything. I have proof of everything, but I still need, I need you to talk. And if you don't, I will destroy you, you and your family." Um, Now, like I said earlier, we know that there's going to be another season, so there can't be a tell-all reveal of of all the details of what's happening. So where the hell is the Irene story gonna go? There's 4 episodes left. What do you guys think? I really, at this point, I don't know what they're going to do with this.
I am super curious as to how it's going to end, because we just know that she can't have gone too far, because unless this is just a made up story, but a lot of it has been so grounded in truth that I only think that either she's going to get killed, or I'm pretty sure that's the only way it's going to end. I don't know if that'll end this season or next season, but I have a feeling she's going to die.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way she's not, and I see, like, potentially even other people at the paper and things, and people. Well, I felt like we'd slowly start to see this paper dismantled and her boss turned against her and everything, but with the way she came at Franklin's dad, they may be coming at her directly. Is the thing, so it's hard to see either way. Like, there's no way she gets this story out, and she's being, I feel, more aggressive than she should be, especially with dealing with people close to Franklin. Like if she's trying to actually, release this story and have witnesses and etc., she may want to take a more subtle approach. I don't think the way she's doing this is going to work out in her favor. Like, in fact, I think the way that she's going about this is what's going to get her killed.
Yeah, with all the information that she has and knowing how many people have died connected with this, it is pretty crazy that she's going in like this. Like you said, directly to his people, acknowledging who she is and what she knows. She's put it out there. What's to keep Alton from going and being like, "Yo, Franklin, this is what's happening, and this is who you need to worry about." I mean, if he does that, you're right. Yeah, Irene's screwed.
Yeah, and I feel that's where we're going next, where, we're going to get Franklin arguing with his dad, and then Franklin's going to look into her. And, likely this is where we, get Nix back into the picture, because she has history with Nix, apparently, so chances are this is where he would return to the show in some fashion. So we'll see. Either way, I don't think she lasts very long.
Stern was one of Andre, the cop neighbor. It was one of his friends, because I looked it up to make sure, but there was a scene where Andre was coming after Franklin one of the earlier seasons, and it was Andre in a car, Nix in a car, and it was Stern too. He was in the car too, and they were all talking. But remember when I think earlier in this season, Nix was in the car and he went to go meet with, I don't remember if that was it, beginning of this season or end of last season, but they were going to talk with Franklin how they were going to go forward. And he was basically Franklin was going to be his informant and give him money, Nix. And I want to say that Stern was in on all that.
That was last season then.
Yeah, it might have been the end of last season.
We have a storyline that's been running for several episodes, Wanda. And this one, we got quite a bit of time of showing her going through withdrawals, and finally, she's clean, she gets out, and she has nowhere to go. She's in the streets. She pretty much reaches out to Leon, and basically is like, "What do I do?" He leads her to the shelter, and she just so happens to be arriving at the same moment Irene comes in and makes, basically her declaration. Will those two storylines converge? Will Wanda and Irene? Will there be something there? Will Wanda be the one that goes and says, "Hey, Franklin, Leon, this is what I heard," or "Hey, something's going on at the shelter"? That was another thought of mine. Will she be, the one that does that? I don't know, but the fact that she was there at that exact time, the way they played that story, do you think her story is going to tie into the Irene story, or is she going to help Irene? What do you guys think?
Oof. I think that it really depends on her mindset, because I think that she is very loyal to Leon, but she may blame Franklin for everything that's happened in her life. So I think that it could go either of the two ways you just mentioned. She could either help and be like, "Hey, this lady's coming after y'all," or like you said, "I have a whole bunch of dirt on Franklin Saint if you want it."
Yeah, I got to agree with Spencer on this one. It's going to be one of those two. Like because there's two options for Franklin to find out. It's either through his father or through her, and it may well be through her beforehand, because they made it a point to show that she overheard this conversation, so there has to be some significance to that. So and I'm more leaning towards her helping out. As long as Leon is a part of the crew, I think she'd be more likely to tell Leon about everything that's going on. In fact, that may be it. It may never, reach Franklin's. Well, it may reach Franklin's ears, but it may be Leon that handles it, because Irene tells Leon. And out of loyalty to Franklin, Leon takes care of it.
Oh, he's done that a couple times throughout the seasons.
Yeah. Franklin's girlfriend, T, is yet again that she has a lot of dialogue that makes you question her, but nothing major. So they have a few scenes together, and she's expressing how she's enjoying their time together, and glad Louie's not here. And then we get her asking specifically about Teddy. Who was that guy? Now you could say, well, she was there, and this guy was acting drunk and weird, and Franklin didn't say, "Hey, just beat his ass and kick him out." Franklin clearly didn't want to do that. He points out that he's a business partner or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But she is asking, are you guys still? Do you think there's something off with her? Is she an informant? Do you think she's undercover, or do you think there's something else going on with this character, or if nothing at all? It's just she's in these positions, and she's asking legitimate questions that anybody would ask.
Well, that again, I think, plays into what Teddy said about everybody being expendable, and I think she's gonna try to exploit that. I think she's trying to find Franklin's plug, and basically, she wants his connection. Like, she wants to know how he's getting this so cheap so that she can start her own.
Oh
operation.
Shit! You think she's? That would be some shit. That'd be a hell of a twist.
Yeah, I think that's their goal, because they mentioned previously, like when they were trying to get info about Manboy and Scully, they went to her, and because she has connections with them, and I think her connections with them are likely much stronger than her connections with Franklin. So she sees it as potentially she can take his business for her own.
Well, like you just said, if she's got connections to Manboy and Scully, who's to say that she's not trying to get the plug for them?
Yeah.
That's a good theory. Yeah, that's a great theory. I didn't think of that. The one storyline I think will resolve in the next 4 episodes is the war with Scully and Manboy. To some degree, how it ends, I have no idea, but I'm assuming that'll resolve. I don't know how listen, they're never going to forgive Leon. They're just not. So what do you do with Leon? It makes sense to send him away. That makes the most sense. Unless you kill him off. I don't think they're going to kill him off this season, but we'll see. I could see them still working with Franklin, because Franklin didn't pull the trigger. He wasn't there. So business is business. but the Leon is the problem. And so that's going to be the key to resolving all of this. What happens with Leon? That's sort of my last question. What do you guys think that feud specifically goes? Because there's no going back now. There just isn't. All the lines that can be crossed have been crossed. Leon is the problem. What is going to be the solution?
I think that with them talking about expansion, that's probably the most likely. But like I said, no character's safe. I wouldn't be too surprised if he didn't make it.
Well, I thought until Franklin said what he said, that he wanted him there on the streets, so that he was trying to clear him to some degree. I thought that was where they were going with this, but now I think, especially with the events of this episode and with us, like we noted over the last few episodes, how much smarter Khadijah seems to be, or how much more in control she seems to be. She's only in control of these two gangs by proxy. In other words, as long as Manboy and Scully are in control of them, she's got some measure control. Because the person that she attacked Fatback with, that seemed to be somebody that either she hired or that she knows. So I imagine Manboy and Scully may get taken out. Them in their upper echelon. But what we're going to be left with is the fact that Franklin perhaps has overlooked how dangerous Khadijah herself is, and maybe not even assume that she was the one that stabbed Fatback. Because right now, outside looking in, they'd likely assume that it was Scully. Or even Manboy, but likely Scully, because Scully's got that crazy streak. So they might deal with those two, but they're going to leave her standing, not knowing how truly dangerous that is.
Well, yeah, because imagine the deep end she's going to go off of if Scully and Manboy both get taken out on top of her daughter getting taken out.
Right? So she's going to have their connections to some degree, but, they will be significantly weakened by those deaths because, she's not just in charge of those gangs if they die, but she does have certain connections that they have and their resources and their money, so she's going to use all of that to come at them and, just kind of build her own. And, so we're building an adversary potentially for our next season.
Yeah, you could be right. Cause I'm sure that the second Franklin saw Fatback, he's like, Scully did this.
Right.
Like that was, which is what I would assume. Yeah. I would assume that too. Especially the way it was done specifically. Right. Seems like something Scully would have done.
Yeah, he tied up and got stabbed like 80 times.
Yeah. And absolutely. Another phenomenal episode, and like I said, it was even sweeter knowing, having just gotten the news that we are getting a 5th season, and hopefully COVID restrictions aren't as severe, and we'll actually get it in 6 to 9 months from now, as opposed to a year and a half, 2 years, like everything else that got delayed. Great episode. Anything else before we wrap this up?
No. Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered it.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, everyone. You'll notice a lot of other content on the channel. Monday or two, it'll be Monday night, probably late Monday night. There'll be 2 new shows that will debut, that being the premiere of City on a Hill Season 2 and the Invincible series premiere. So we'll be reviewing those 2 shows, so check that out. Appreciate everyone listening.
Bye.
Bye.